Hey, a lot happened over the weekend. Auburn loses some coaches. They add some big time players from the portal. And what's going on with the offensive and defensive coordinator search? We're going to talk about it all today on episode 10 of the Top Button podcast. I'm Charlie Five. It was an eventful weekend, and boy, oh boy, is it going to be fun to talk about it and rehash it. But before we do, let's give a shout out to Active Wealth Management and our boy, Ford Stokes, direct descendant from Benjamin Franklin. And that is what he wants to make sure you have tons of in your bank account, Benjamin Franklin's. Go check out activewealth.com and ask for custom a custom breakdown, a custom plan to get you to the promised land, to get you where you want to be. That's based around your goals, what you have going on, and not some cookie cutter YouTube video type thing that everybody can get just by simply Googling. No, this is a plan directly tailored towards you. You can also check out his website, annuity360.net, and he can send you an autographed free book talking all the ins and outs of annuities and the things that he can do for you. So show him some love, give him a shout out. He's a big Auburn guy, so tell him War Eagle and that you're ready to work together. At Active Wealth Management. Check them out at activewealth.com. All right, guys, there's no real way to talk about this without just diving right in and talking about Caddy and Zach stepping down, leaving, departing, taking other jobs, and what have you. And we'll start with, the big one, the one that hurts a lot of the Auburn family. That's Cadillac. I want to preface this discussion with this one simple thing, okay? Your love for Cadillac as a player does not have to be dependent on your love for him as a coach as well. They can be separate. Okay. If you're sad that he's gone, that's fine. If you're relieved or you're excited about other possibilities, that's okay too. That doesn't take away anything from what he's done for Auburn. That doesn't take away anything of the way you feel about what he did from Auburn. If you were younger when you watched him come through, if you were older when you watched him come through and you loved him, he was a fan favorite. None of that changes any of those memories. None of this changes the Texas A&M memories when he stepped up and stepped in the void and sort of gave Auburn hope again, I guess, sort of brought Auburn together in a dark time and sort of made us feel like we have made us feel that spark again. That atmosphere at Texas A&M was unreal, or at home against Texas A&M was absolutely unreal, with only being a 3-win team, sellout, electric atmosphere. It was unbelievable. And that's him leaving does not change any of those memories. Okay. With all that being said, I personally, I'm right around the same age as Caddy. He was graduating as I was coming into Auburn. So obviously there's that connection there. Watching him in the peak of when you're right in the, heart of, or starting to really get into college football in your high school years and things like that. But if you remember when I first joined the show when I first joined Locked On Auburn and we talked about Cadillac, I've always said that I want to see my running backs coach wear a lot of hats. I want to see him be the dog on the recruiting trail. I want to see him be, all over the place. The face of the recruiting operation, the recruiting coordinator, things of that nature. And for whatever reason, that just wasn't Caddy. Caddy was a running backs coach. He was only recruiting running backs. And by design or by some other mechanism, but it was consistent over 3 coaching staffs. And I think there was just a lot of meat left on the bone there from what you need when college football, when recruiting is king. Now he could go get the best, he could go get your top running back like every single year. He could probably go get that top running back that you target every single year. But that was pretty much it. That was pretty much it. And I think if you were to go pull up different rivals that we have and look at what their running backs coaches do, I just feel like there was a lot left to be desired there from that position, from a recruiting standpoint. And I'm sorry if that hurts some feelings, because I know at Auburn we will look past, we will look past resumes, we'll look past anything to just get a former player on staff, and then we get up in arms when they leave. And I'm not sugarcoating anything. I'm just telling it like it is. I'm happy that he gets to get outside of Auburn, go pursue and further his career at elsewhere, and maybe work his way back to Auburn one day. Who knows? Who knows? He may go be able to get a play calling gig at some smaller school. He may, who knows? Who knows what he can go get a head coaching job at some smaller school. Regardless, the position he was in at Auburn, it was going to be really hard for him to advance any further. And I think now you have an opportunity to bring somebody in that may give you a little bit more versatility on the recruiting trail. You could be a little bit more, lean on them a little bit harder to carry the load instead of Hugh having to carry the load of essentially all the offensive recruiting. So, it stinks from a nostalgia standpoint. I get it. It's fun to see him on the sideline. It's fun to see him get fired up. I think that once kids get here, they fall in love with him. It's just that whole, outgoing, go get them type thing that Cadillac's sort of a, if you get them to me, I can win him over, because he's a celebrity. He's got the wow factor from there, but it's just going out, finding kids, winning them over. I don't know. I don't really understand why that never seemed to be, a huge priority to utilize him in that way. But it was, like I said, it was consistent over 3 coaching staffs. You got your one running back, you go get him, and that's who we got. I mean, in 6 years, I think he has 6 total commits in 6 years. Like that's just like one a class. And I just think you got to have more. I think you got to have more out of your running backs coach, whoever that is, because it is probably one of the, not saying it's unimportant, but it's one of the, I guess, easier positions, less developmental position coach out of all. If you lined up all the different positions, I think running backs coach probably takes the least demanding from a coaching aspect. Now, I think you do want somebody that can bring something to the table, and you do want somebody that can bring new ideas and things like that. But just from strictly running backs is just kind of running backs, and to me, and wide receivers it's like a skills that you're just born with. The instincts, the vision, the hands for the wide receiver, the speed. It's not a lot of, you're not doing bucket steps like the offensive line. You're not working on how to get off a, press man. You're not helping them, learn how to jam correctly from a defensive back perspective, and tackling angles and different types of, coverages and things like that. Those are your primary recruiting positions, your running backs coach and your wide receivers coach. And it just, at least from my perspective, I feel like there was a lot left to be desired. So I'm anxious to see what happens. I'm anxious to see where he goes. Obviously, we're all going to be pulling for him wherever that is. And again, though, none of that changes. If you're happy he's gone, it doesn't change. It doesn't change anything about how you feel about him as a player, how you feel about him when he was the interim head coach. It doesn't mean that one person loves him more than the other. Okay. It just is the way it is. You got to be able to separate the player and the coach. And an former Auburn player isn't just qualified to coach at Auburn just because he's an Auburn player. Okay. And that's all I'm going to say. That's all I'm going to say from there. I just don't think, I feel like get wrapped up a lot into former players than maybe most places. So wish Caddy the best. Let's see what happens. We're going to talk about possibilities of his replacement later on in the show. Another coach that was a former player that won a national championship at Auburn, Zach Etheridge, takes the defensive backs coach, maybe co-DC title, I'm not 100% sure, at Houston. Now, on the surface, this looks like, he's taken a step down because Houston's not in the same conference. And that may be the case, but I think there is some relationships there between Willie Fritz, the new head coach who was at Tulane. There may be some relationships there between Zach and him and maybe another member of his family. And I'm just going to leave it at that. I don't want to go too far into that. So I don't think this one is as nefarious, or Zach was necessarily doing a bad job or not really pulling his weight, because I think Zach was a baller for the most part. I think he was instrumental in player retention more so than player, going and getting players. Like, anytime it felt like we had a defensive back that was on the fence about possibly, transferring or whatever, it always seemed like you hear, Zach saved us. So that's some big shoes to fill. Zach's shoes are going to be tough to fill because he was a dog on the recruiting trail. You saw Georgia tried to get him away from us a couple of years ago. They were going to pay him just crazy money. I think we ended up giving him like the associate, or Cadillac was associate head coach, but maybe it was recruiting coordinator. I think he was our recruiting coordinator. And as a defensive backs coach, which is a developmental position that takes a lot of coaching. That's not just the recruiting position for a defensive backs coach to be your recruiting coordinator. That's saying a lot. That's saying a lot on his skill set in-house. And he recruited everybody. I don't know if you noticed, Perry Thompson had this documentary, which is incredible. It may be still linked on his Instagram. It talks about, his upbringing and, whatnot. And then it kind of centered a lot around some of the in-home visits and Auburn's in-home visit, recruiting in-home visit. And guess who came? Perry Thompson plays wide receiver. Guess who came with Hugh? And guess who came with Marcus Davis? Zach Etheridge. He's a common name in a lot of recruitments. Just about any time you hear somebody, you hear Zach on the road, Zach visiting. Zach and Trevon, I feel like are Bash brothers on the trail. They are the ones that are in the mix all the time. So he's going to be one that is going to be tough to replace. And I think you replaced him with two very, very seasoned, two very, very good recruiting defensive backs coaches in Charles Kelly. And then you get Wesley McGriff back. So, we thought we lost him to Texas A&M. We had a little bit of these staff shakeups, Ron Roberts leaving, which there was some friction there. And now you got Wesley McGriff back in the room. And according to reports, when he was reintroduced to the team, Wesley McGriff, everybody went nuts. Like the whole team went nuts. He's obviously a player favorite. So you lose Cadillac, you lose Zach. You have not technically brought in a replacement yet for Cadillac. That may be by design currently, because anytime you're down a coach, you get to promote somebody from off the field into a recruiting role, and you only have, I don't know, less than a month left before late signing day. Trevon is that guy right now. Trevon's been bumped up, so he's on the road recruiting. And so we're not necessarily maybe in a huge rush to replace that name to replace that position quite yet. We'll talk about that again a little bit later. But when you lose Zach, you bring back Wesley McGriff, and then you add Charles Kelly. Both of their recruiting lists are incredible. Both of them are incredibly talented in home. You're starting to kind of see some of the portal stuff. You're reaping benefits from having Charles Kelly there already, and we'll talk about that shortly. But all in all, so far, I would say it's a push at best, a push at worst, when we're talking about coaches out and coaches in. And we'll see how the rest of the offensive staff shakes out. And we're going to talk about that again in just a bit. Before we do that, let's also give a shout out to plainscoffee.com. Guys, why do you want to go to the grocery store and fight the lines, fight the traffic, and just the general inconvenience to get your coffee when you can have it sent straight to your door? And we're not talking about coffee that's been sitting in a warehouse for months. We're talking about fresh roasted the day before they ship, so fresh that you can smell it on the doorstep coffee. And if you're not a coffee guy, you're not a coffee gal, they got teas too. Visit plainscoffee.com. Use promo code BUTTON. That's easy to remember. Top Button Pod. Use coupon code BUTTON. Take 10% off literally every single order from now until the end of time. And have fresh coffee, support in a local Auburn guy. And, you're buying it already. You're buying coffee already. You might as well buy better coffee and just have it shipped to your door. So check them out, plainscoffee.com. Coupon code BUTTON for 10% off. So I mentioned you got Charles Kelly in the house right now. You got Wesley McGriff back in the house. Over the weekend, you add a couple of big time additions from the portal. And then, when you're listening to this podcast, you probably have already added another one. Okay. So in order, Percy Lewis, big offensive tackle from Mississippi State. We're in it early with him. Then you kind of felt like we were fading. He was going to come so he visited Arkansas. Then he was going to come to Auburn, and then he's going to go to Ole Miss. Well, he canceled his Auburn visit. So everybody's like, dadgummit, he's out. He's out. He goes to Ole Miss, doesn't commit to Ole Miss, circles back around, visits Tennessee, and then all of a sudden I think after he visited Ole Miss, he ended up coming back through Auburn. Well, then he goes and visits Tennessee, and then boom, all of a sudden, Auburn's feeling really good. Okay, we're feeling really good about adding this guy. Different offensive linemen ended up signing places that helped sort of free up or take some spots that Percy may have been looking at or whatever. But anyway, the way it all shook out, boom, all of a sudden it's Auburn, Tennessee, and he ends up committing and signing, and I guess he's enrolling at Auburn, and I just think that's absolutely huge. He throughout his career, he's sort of been a developmental guy. He was a JUCO kid, and then he ended up signing with Mississippi State. He didn't play. I don't think he played 2 years ago, but this past year, he played quite a bit. He would have probably been, one of our better graded linemen. If you look at Pro Football Focus, things like that. The biggest thing about Percy is I feel like Percy is like adding two guys from the portal. And what do I mean by that? Percy allows you to possibly lock in that left or right tackle spot and move someone else, one of those tackles inside, who are just as good and have had time to play there, whether it be Dylan Wade or Xavier Miller. Probably Dylan Wade, probably going to look at putting him at left tackle. Just, again, helping the depth, helping the add to flexibility in the line, and just, again, a guy that a lot of different folks wanted. A lot of folks were that really needed that big time left tackle, and Auburn gets him. one of the biggest needs I feel like in the portal. Maybe let me take that back. Biggest need is not probably the right um, probably not the right description, because I feel like the bigger needs were your defensive back, your defensive line, which we did add to, but it's a big time luxury to be able to have Dylan Wade get the opportunity to slide inside and play the position that is going to best help him translate to the NFL. And and in a worst case scenario, you just have the same line that you had last year. But I think he's a big luxury, probably the biggest luxury to be able to add a big time. When I say big time, not only from a talent standpoint, but just from a sheer size standpoint, a big time left tackle that offers you up a lot of flexibility on the interior. Very, very excited. You should be excited about this guy. And he's in here early. He's going to be able to go through spring workouts, whatever he has to do to get ready, just that extra time to be able to be ready and play in the fall. And that offensive line, who took a huge step forward last year, has a chance to take an even further step forward again. With, you got Connor Lew with another year under his belt, freshman All-American. Then you have obviously Dylan Wade. You got a battle at the other guard spot, and then you got Isaiah Miller, who was thrown into the fire early and played really well. Another chance to get another year of conditioning, another year of development. He's got 2 left to play. So all of a sudden you're starting to feel, and you're starting to feel really good about the offensive line. You're starting to build some quality depth. And that was a big one. That was a big one. So Percy Lewis, he's here. He's going to be enrolled quickly and going through classes and going through workouts and getting ready for spring. So he's going to be a fun one to watch. Probably my favorite player so far, maybe the biggest addition of this portal class, is Jaron Thompson from Texas, a safety who was just added yesterday. He just committed yesterday. So you're listening to this on a Tuesday. He committed and signed on Monday. He came in over the weekend, and he was supposed to leave from Auburn and go straight to Florida. I think once he got here, he canceled his visit. So we did what other people have been doing to us. We got him here on the visit and shut her down. And that's fun to see. That's great to see, because, that's happened to us so many times where we were going to be patient, just get a visit on the list, and then dudes were committing before they could even come in their visit. Well, now we flipped the script and we did it to Florida. So you get Jaron Thompson in, played a ton of football. He's played for 4 years, been very, very productive at safety. This is not just a depth piece. This is a starter. This is a starter safety that can come in. He's only got 1 year to play, and I feel like that's really all we need from him, to come in, play, bring that veteran presence to this young but very talented safety room. Last year, he had like 80 tackles. This year, he had another productive year. He had a big interception, probably a game-sealing interception in Tuscaloosa this year when Texas played Alabama. Not a huge guy, 6'1", 190-ish. What I call lurkers, those lurker safeties, not just dudes that are going to come up at 215 and rock you behind the line of scrimmage, or be, dudes that are just going to take on big blocks. I'm just talking about those dudes that hang back and make plays. Now, he has lined up all over the field. He's very versatile, but again, I think his position primarily is going to be that free safety lurker position that Auburn sorely needs on the back end of their defense, to be able to cover a lot of field, be savvy, be able to understand what offenses are trying to do. And just we're youthful, we're inexperienced, and his experience is invaluable. And he's the perfect bridge. Okay. He is the perfect bridge 1 year, because we had a really good class, Hugh's first class, the first half class. When he got here, he scrambled and threw a bunch together, a great defensive back class there. And then You have a super athletic defensive back and highly rated defensive backs class that you just signed, that most every single one of them are already enrolled. So those guys they just need some time. And this guy affords you that, coupled along with Laquan Robinson, the JUCO product that we signed. I mean, I just can't think of a better portal addition that means the most, like the most quality player that we've got that just so feels a huge need, like Jaron Thompson. And I'm excited. That's a kid that he's enrolled as well. He's going to go through spring. He is going to help us immensely early and often, be a mentor to these young guys. Just again, afford them the opportunity to not have to go full force to the Wolves, like you saw in the Maryland game. Now, that experience was great for them. You got tape on them, everything like that. But this is a huge deal. This is a huge deal for that room. And the cool thing about it, that 1 year guy, you're getting to a point now after this next season, you may not necessarily have to even look at another safety or anything like that in the portal for a very long time, barring injury, barring transfer, barring something unforeseen. You ought to be just about set at safety now moving forward. That's cool. That's cool. That was fast that we got there that quickly. And I think that trend is going to sort of, after this next, is going to sort of be throughout the whole roster, sort of moving forward. It's not going to be that we got to bring in 12 guys anymore. Maybe it's just 5 or 6 next off season. So Jaron Thompson, huge. Cannot express enough how big that guy is as an addition to this roster. Now let's talk about somebody that I think could be Auburn could be very close to adding. Now, again, it's Tuesday. By the time you're listening to this, he very well could already be committed. I think we're in the driver's seat, and that's for Antonio Kite from Alabama. I say quickly, expect it quickly, because it kind of has to be quickly. It has to be quickly, because January 17th is which is tomorrow, is the last day to enroll, is the last day to be able to sign up and add classes. Okay. Because, so he's got today or he's got tomorrow to get here to Auburn. I think it possibly is going to be today. Antonio Kite, he'll be coming in as a redshirt freshman, so he'll play his next season. He'll be a redshirt sophomore. Okay, high 4-star defensive back from Anniston, Alabama. He would have been in the 2022 class our highest rated signee. It would have been him, then JD Rim. They'd have been our highest rated signees. A long, athletic corner. Alabama is just, they're deep, obviously. So a lot of these freshmen and redshirt freshmen that see the opportunity that they can go be a starter elsewhere are bolting, especially now that Nick Saban's gone, and that you just hired an offensive head coach, so to speak. You don't have a defensive coordinator yet. I think they're probably about to have that filled, but still, these guys are looking for opportunities, and I think Auburn is an awesome opportunity. I love adding portal guys from in-state. I love it. It's just, I feel like it helps with relationships, high school relationships. It helps with future pipelines. I feel like that area, is a big Alabama area. So it's good to be able to have somebody that you can kind of, pin and say, hey, we're going to put a flag down here, and we got a guy here, and we can use, not necessarily use him, but that could open doors to talking to other kids in that area. But where does he fit in, this whole defensive back lineup? So you got Kayan Lee, who's going to be a solidified starter at one corner. You got Keontae Scott, who wants to be an outside corner. And then you got Antonio Kite, as well as JD Rim and some other young guys that are going to be battling out for that other corner and that nickel spot. Ultimately, what I think's probably going to happen, what I kind of hope happens, is that Antonio Kite is a guy that can play the opposite corner as Kane Lee, and that, I don't want to say influences or pushes, but I think I'm hoping that it helps get Keontae Scott back at that nickel spot, because again, I just love him close to the ball. I love him over that slot guy, whoever that is. He's athletic enough. He's physical enough to go with to run with the bigger guys, to bang on those, bigger tight ends that line up in the slot. And then he's just got a knack for making tackles behind the line of scrimmage. And the further you put him away from the ball, the less opportunities you have for that kind of stuff to happen. So Kite is a guy that could I guess, afford us the opportunity to not necessarily have to have Scott be the other outside corner. I know that may be what he wants to be, and he still may be. Kite could possibly play nickel. Who knows? But you just have a 6'1" dude that can long corner that can play that outside corner, so Scott doesn't have to play corner. He may end up still winning the job, but he doesn't have to now. He doesn't have to. Now you got multiple guys that can play out there that you can feel good if, it pops like we all hope. That's a Charles Kelly connection. That's his, he is an Alabama recruiting guy. He's recruited the state of Alabama just as good as anybody has. That's one of those connections. And I think there's a lot more of those that you're going to see moving forward, whether it be through the portal or relationships that he has in high school, regardless. So those two for sure additions, and then hopefully when you're listening, the Kite news is already out. And hopefully I'm not wearing an egg on my face on that either, but feel pretty good. I think Auburn feels pretty good about it. So again, adding those three guys along with your veteran defensive linemen and your other portal pieces. We'll talk about sort of the grade, so to speak, of how you did in the portal. Did you make your team better and stuff like that? Maybe on Thursday or next week, something like that. But right now, be happy with these two additions and hopefully this third one, and just continue to bid. You don't have a whole lot of time left before enrollment, so hopefully you'll go ahead. Maybe there could be some other guys that are added, and we'll talk about those when it happens. All right, last thing, offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator. Let's start with defensive coordinator because it should be quick. There's just not a lot of updates. It's just not a lot of updates. Early, it seemed like Chris Kiffin was going to be the guy. It was done. You felt like you were just, it was just a foregone conclusion. The Houston Texans win their playoff game this past weekend. Their defense looks really good. And now he's in talk of possibly getting a defensive coordinator gig in the NFL. You're not super rushed to make a call with him. You're not super rushed to have to have a decision from him. Only, I'm sorry, you're not super rushed to have him make a decision unless there's a possibility that decision is no, I'm not coming, because the coaching hiring cycle is starting to kind of come to an end, where guys are going to be locked in. They're moved to wherever they're going to be moved to, and heck, spring ball is not super duper far, from starting. So I don't think you just want to just wait for him until the playoffs are done and just say, hey, we're going to wait, and then whatever happens, happens. You've probably given him a solid offer. You probably said, hey, look, this is what we want. We need you to make a decision or we got to move on. And I think that tipping point of having to move on is either here and past, or it's very, very close. It's very, very close. So I would love to add Chris Kiffin. I would love to add him from his wealth of knowledge in the NFL, that additional pass rushing specialist. So Jeremy Garrett doesn't have to be your 100% guy on the defensive line. You can have an edge guy. Chris Kiffin can kind of tutor the edges because that's sort of been his calling card. And you got Josh Aldridge can manage the linebackers, and it's not like right now Aldridge and Garrett are kind of sharing those duties. Now you could have a dedicated dude, pass rushing specialist guy that can recruit like a madman, has an NFL pedigree. You pair him with Charles Kelly and his wealth of knowledge. I think those two could be a huge team together, but something's got to happen fast with him. I just don't think you can wait a ton longer because the hiring cycles are starting to heat up and finish. So if you move on from Chris Kiffin, where do you go? Where do you go? Two names that have been thrown out there by Justin Hokanson on 3, Tom Allen, who actually took the defensive coordinator job at Penn State. He was the head coach at Indiana. Unbelievable defensive mind. If I could choose, I'd love to have Chris Kiffin, but I mean, if you had the choice, Tom Allen would be a home run. Tom Allen would be a home run. It's sort of a maybe possibly a Wesley McGriff situation where maybe it's not completely final that he signed all his deal and his finish, and you could pick him off. Him and Hugh have history together. He was a part of that Ole Miss staff that was so good. And he sort of ascended through the coaching ranks to get a head coach in Indiana, get the head coaching gig at Indiana. That's a tough place to win. But he's been a heck of a defensive coach everywhere he's been. So it'd be huge. He's possibly on the table, but the guy I think maybe the most likely could be like a DJ Durkin. Big time, sort of had his rise as a coach at Florida from a linebacking perspective, recruiting perspective, ended up getting the head coach, I think the head coaching gig at Maryland. Then he was the defensive coordinator, I believe, at Texas A&M, up until this, last coaching change. Again, another guy that's known as a recruiter. He could be a guy that you look at adding. There's just not a lot of solid, I guess there's not a lot of, it's not as sort of in stone, or not as sort of like a clear picture at defensive coordinator as it is for offensive coordinator, at least from the person you want to get perspective. I think you really wanted Chris Kiffin. Now that water's a little bit muddy. You're going to have to pivot possibly pretty quickly. If not, you've already pivoted. Could one or two or three of these other guys be a factor? And then, if push comes to shove, you still got Charles Kelly there that could end up running the defense, who's, has had a long career, a lot of experience with, some of the top defensive minds in college football. Obviously Nick Saban, and then he ran, I think he was on staff with, worked hand in hand with Mark Stoops at Florida State. So again, when they were winning, and he's an unbelievable recruiter. So like, if your consolation prize is Charles Kelly, you're doing okay. You're doing okay. So let's see how it shakes out. Do you give Kiffin one last chance to Chris Kiffin one last chance to pull the trigger? Do you pivot, make a hard run at, a Tom Allen, a DJ Durkin, or somebody's name who hasn't necessarily popped up yet? We'll have to see. Offensive coordinator has been it's been weird, but at the same time, it when you start to see Lane Kiffin and the stuff that he's tweeting about and the stuff that he's saying, the picture's sort of coming a little bit clearer on Derek Nix and why it's not already over, I guess. So if you remember last year, I believe Hugh wanted to bring him in as a wide receivers coach, and it was a done deal. It was going to happen. And then it just like evaporated. there was a hang up in the wording of the contract. If he got a promotion, it had to be an actual promotion to a different title or something. Or he would have to pay a huge buyout, or you'd have to pay a huge buyout, or whatever. And that just wasn't in the cards at that point in time. And sort of are going through that same scenario now. But it went dark for a while. Kiffin did that tweet where it was like, hey, y'all stop calling me. Derek Nix is not going to Auburn, or he's not at Auburn, or something like that. And it was a picture of Derek Nix, and they're in their war room or whatever, clearly looking at film on a portal player. So everybody's like, man, I guess the Derek Nix thing is over. But Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss in general won't stop tweeting, won't stop talking about Auburn, which makes me think this thing's not over. Makes me think this thing's not over. So if the wording and is an item that makes it really clear that they are going after the wording in his contract that says, something along the lines of he can't be an offensive coordinator in title. He's got to be a primary play caller. And one of the things that that's the case, or that's the sticking point, is that Lane Kiffin tweeted an article from Chris Lowe from, a few weeks ago that says Hugh Freeze is going to be your primary play caller. I'm so like still coaches saying they're going to call plays. They're not going to call plays. Hugh Freeze says he's going to call plays. Well, there's an article about it. Well, in the midst of all this talk of trying to get Derek Nix, okay, he's got to be a primary play caller. But look, here's an article where you said you're going to be the primary play caller. So what's the deal? Again, I think it's just a matter of time before Derek Nix is going to be the guy. I hope he's the guy. And I don't know how you can really enforce somebody being the primary play caller, because it's not like we're going to give Ole Miss or Lane Kiffin the play sheets, or we're not going to give them access to the headsets where they can hear who's calling the plays, or we're not doing like sending them Excel spreadsheets of him calling over 50% of the plays or whatever. Again, I just don't really know how you enforce that at all. But the biggest thing is, I get wanting to retain a guy, but you're keeping this guy from excelling. Like, you're keeping this guy from getting a promotion. And I think that could come back and sort of make you look bad from really trying to hurt furthering this guy's career. So again, when you're listening to this, it could be official. It may still be a couple more days. Quite frankly, there does not seem to be a backup plan. There does not seem to be a backup option for your offensive coordinator position. I think if this thing completely falls through, you probably just name Kent Austin offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach, and you go try to find a stud running back coach recruiter. It's late in the game, but there's probably still some young guys out there that you can go grab that can be great recruiters. But let's hope it doesn't necessarily have to come to that. I was talking with some friends, and they're like, what do you gain? What do you gain when you bring in a guy like Derek Nix? Because you're in theory, Hugh's going to have to come off the road a little bit to be able to run the offense and call the plays. And the way I look at it is, when it was Hugh, it was Carnell, and it was our Cadillac, and it was Philip Montgomery. Hate me, get mad at me, whatever you want to say. You had one full-time recruiter. That's it. And that was Hugh Freeze. That's it. This year, Cadillac didn't sign anybody. That's tough. That's hard to do. Like, there's no recruit that was tied to his name this year. So you had one full-time recruiter. Now, if it's just 25% or 30% that he comes off the road, and then you add Derek Nix to the room, and then you add Ken Austin, who has been the offensive coordinator for Hugh Freeze before at Liberty. Now, if you just have two 70%, 75% full-time on the trail type guys with Nix and Hugh at the highest level that they are, now you've kind of increased to now you got 1.5 big time recruiters on the trail, and you're still able to maintain the offense to where Hugh can come in and call the offense and run the offense the way he wants to do it. And I think that is clearly the most ideal situation because you got to think if Hugh's calling plays, it's going to reduce some of his workload on the trail. So you got to be able to supplement that. And there's no doubt the way we want to supplement it is with another phenomenal recruiter and guy that knows Hugh and Derek Nix. So those to me, as offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator, you don't have a ton. Your portal period is pretty much closed. You don't have a ton left in high school. You got pretty much Ryan Williams, and that's it. And Hughes he's going to be the lead guy there with Marcus Davis. That's not going to change. Adding an offensive coordinator, Ryan knows who's calling the offense. Ryan knows the direction of this offense moving forward. So he's not going to be necessarily dependent on having to have an offensive coordinator to give him that vision. So I don't necessarily know that it increases I don't know that you're necessarily running out of time, but I think you want to get some guys in because you got to get your game plan together for spring, because you got to make as much out of the spring as you possibly can, develop, get this roster ready to go in 2024, because after this last season, unfortunately, maybe not with people that understand the situation that we're in, when you end a season 6 and 7, fans are going to want to see a big jump in year 2. And I think we have the talent, albeit young, to make that jump. But hopefully we can get some guys in here so we get some coaches in here soon so we can start pushing that forward, especially with the portal coming to close, late signing day creeping in. And, again, you'll be set. You can stop worrying about it and just move forward. So, again, once those hires are made, we're going to talk about it. And then once all the coaching positions are filled, we're going to go through last year, this year. Did we get better? Did we get worse? And then talk about outlook moving forward. So, again, a lot happened over the weekend. Hopefully I got you caught up. This is a long-winded pod today. So, again, you got to do that when you have the information and news dump that you had on Friday and Saturday. So, but we'll keep you caught up here. And Thursday, it'll be another banger, and we'll get after it again. Thursday, when Thursday rolls around, the portal will be not necessarily closed, but enrolling in spring will be closed. So we'll talk about a little roster stuff. Any additions, we'll go over that as well. So, guys, I appreciate it. Again, this was episode 10. Of the Top Button Podcast. We'll catch you again on Wednesday. Stay buttoned.